I'm Sam Martin, and this is my TED Talk. We as people, we value diversity in all of its forms. We value diversity in background, we value diversity in thought, we value diversity in identity. But more often than not, there are systems in place and institutions in place that don't necessarily value people who are of the dominant identity. So, a white, heterosexual, Christian, able-bodied, cis man, right, who is in the middle class. Institutions such as racism and like wealth disparities make it possible so that Black and brown people who are in poverty don't have the same opportunities in life as folks who aren't do, right? And there's so much potential in Black and brown communities that can be realized. But one of the things that, Black and brown people who are in poverty don't have access to is higher education. And community colleges can be that catalyst to have potential be realized. For some students, community colleges are the first step to continuing their education. And for other students who are impoverished, community college is the only step to continue their education. For some students, community college is the only way they can make it to be, contributors to society, right? Entering into the workforce, being able to break into that economic mainstream to try to elevate their social position as much as possible. And for other students, it can help them articulate what they've been feeling. It can help them give them the voice and the means that they need to become the next social justice leaders and to be leaders of the next social justice movement. Diversity in all of its forms is so valued and it can benefit our society in so many ways. But if the systems that we have in place don't allow that diversity to come and allow that diversity to be realized and fully appreciated, we can never get to that point. And one of the things that I like to say is that diversity, as we know it, can be contingent upon each other. So, for example, diversity of identity can produce diversity of background, which can also produce diversity of thought. So if there's a Black or brown student living in poverty in an inner city area, and they get the opportunity to go to a community college and really learn how to articulate how they're feeling and write and articulate their voice and figure out what exactly they want to do with their lives, that student could continue to go on to a 4-year college or university and can continue to elevate their position. Not saying that education is the means to an end, but education can definitely be a tool to reduce inequalities and disparities that we see in our society. And community colleges can be the way to do that. So when students are underprivileged, one of the biggest consequences that they will have to suffer is that they can't have access to higher ed. Whether that's they might not have a state ID, they may not be able to physically access the community college, they might not have the money to be able to attend community college, so they're working in another maybe low-income job just to make ends meet, and they can't afford to put themselves or their family members through community college or through higher education in general. And while we understand that is a problem, there are partnerships with community colleges that allow students to be able to have those sort of opportunities for them to be great. And one of the reasons why Black and brown students need to be able to get to a place where they can accurately and adequately receive higher education is not only is it a smart thing to do economically, it's the right thing to do. There's that sort of moral authority that comes with allowing all folks to be served in higher ed, and that allows all folks to be able to have access and be able to benefit from higher education as an institution, right? And the nation, as we know it, is changing. Demographically, we're seeing more and more people of color, more and more undocumented immigrants coming in. And with the uncertainty that, the politics can bring in regards to education or in regards to immigration, education is something that is very precious, because we always say knowledge is power, But if we don't give students access to that knowledge, we don't give students access to that power that they can actually have realized in themselves. And with the nation changing, higher education has to be able to serve those needs of the student population that's changing. And community colleges have been doing that for quite a while, because community colleges serve all of this, are able to serve all of the students that are in their constituency, all of the students regardless of race, gender, sexual orientation, income status, etc. And we understand that community college students aren't necessarily what we would call traditional students, right? Some of them have full-time jobs. Some of them have families. Some of them are only able to go to school at night for various reasons. And community colleges have been those avenues for students to get what they need out of our higher education system in order to be successful. Now, the call is on community colleges to be able to rise up to the growing diversity in the demographics of our nation, the growing call for producing diverse thinkers, producing diverse people who are able to do work, whether that's in workforce training, whether that's in specialized, associate's degree programs. A lot of community colleges now are expanding to include baccalaureate programs because they understand the demand for people, right? So people need to be valued in this, regardless of where they come from, whether they have money or not, whether they are able to continue after community college. They need to be able to be served adequately in the best way that they know how. And community colleges can be the catalyst for students to be able to be successful. Future roles for community colleges definitely come for especially in the future, one of the big roles that they will undertake, I guess I would say, or take on, would be advocates and leaders of social justice movements, right? Understanding that education is something that should be accessible to everyone is a huge act of social justice, because we understand that people should be treated equally. And with community colleges sort of forging the way to be inclusive and to serve all of the students that they have in their constituencies, higher ed as a discipline can follow that. And with Black and brown students who need that sort of drive from an institution, knowing that they have institutional support, being accepting and inclusive is an act of social justice that community colleges will have to undertake. And they also serve the public good, because when we have students who are able to come in, get a good education that they will be able to use and apply to their everyday life, and kind of take that theory to practice aspect of education and be able to contribute to their society in a meaningful, beneficial way, the community colleges have done their job, and higher ed as an institution has done their job. And while community colleges and four-year institutions can be fundamentally different, they both serve the same purpose, and I think that that's what a lot of the general public loses sight of when we think of community colleges and community colleges' potential to be able to do amazing, amazing things for our country. And the reason why this subject is super, super important to consider is that education is a tool to reducing inequalities that marginalized groups face every day. Granted, education is not the solution to the problem, but it is a very, very valuable tool to allow for students to move up in socioeconomic status, allow for students to advocate for themselves so that they're able to clearly articulate what they need and what is not being done, right? And community colleges, again, are often the first step to continuing that education. And for some students, it's the only step. So what they learn and what they gain from community colleges is so important because of it. Serving these populations effectively and giving the tools that they need them for them to succeed is at the core of community college's mission. So especially with this I don't want to call it an issue because it's not an issue, but especially with the diversity matter in higher education, if an institution isn't sticking to their mission, their vision, their values, there's a disconnect there, right? And students might not want to go to that place. But with community colleges working towards to stick to their mission, vision, and values, higher ed will have to know, and community colleges will have to know how to serve all students to the best of their ability. And that means serving students regardless of race, socioeconomic status, sexuality, gender, the whole gambit, right? So one of the things that I learned through all of this was that community colleges are so much more vital to higher education and to contribution to society than the general public gives it credit for, right? Community colleges are just as vital to student success and society's success and democratization and globalization as its four-year institutions are. Like I mentioned before, to some students, it's their first step, maybe their second step. For some students, it's their only step. So what's so important about that only step is if that's the only step that students take, especially students from marginalized populations, that has to be the step that matters. That has to be the step that changes their life. That has to be the step that they just don't take class just to take class. They take class to change the world. And that's what community colleges can do. Community colleges, with valuing diversity and valuing the people they serve, can change the world. Not to say that four-year colleges or universities can't, but community colleges are on the forefront of that change.